and welcome back to another episode of Singularity Speaks. My name is Rick, here again with Lee. Paul, welcome back, guys.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, how's it going?
So this morning, in the time it took me to brush my teeth, Chinese automaker BYD probably sold another 1,000 electric vehicles. Meanwhile, the other day I had to explain to someone that no, my electric car won't randomly catch fire and explode in the rain. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about all things electric vehicles and the massive gap between the US and China and the race to the future of automobiles. In truth, it's really not much of a race anymore with the release of BYD's latest Blade 2.0 battery, leaving US auto manufacturers on the side of the road with a gas can and a blown head gasket. So how did the US end up here and how do we catch up? So let's talk about it.
I was reading an article that you sent, Rick, where Honda's president said, what was his quote? "We must act quickly," which is an ironic thing to say when earlier he had been saying, we've got no chance.
Right. When you hear, legacy auto manufacturers talk about the future of vehicles and electric vehicles, it's bleak. It's pretty bleak. There isn't a lot of positivity that they're going to be able to catch up.
So from what I've been researching, it seems like a lot of the problem is just like U.S. consumers having all these misconceptions, misunderstandings. You mentioned one of like, oh, it's going to catch on fire if it rains or something, or
right.
I'm going to have to park the car in the garage because if it rains, an electrical fire is going to happen. Right. Or the other one is they're afraid of that they're going to be able to go 10 miles and then they'll be stuck out in the middle of nowhere. They won't be able to find a charging port in range. But this comes down to another thing, that there's different types of EVs too.
Yeah. There's so much misinformation out there, and it's hard for people to find the right place to go to get the right information. I'm hoping that today we can kind of dispel some of those rumors and myths and kind of go over some facts about that kind of stuff. I actually did have a call from my older brother. You guys remember back when California was on fire? I mean, it's almost kind of every year, unfortunately, right? We have some pretty bad fires here in California, but... Oh,
yeah, when you be driving on the freeway and it's all scorched.
Yeah, and we had these bad fires in L.A. recently.
Palisades.
Palisade, yeah. And it was awful. And my brother calls me up and he's like, so, what do you do if there's a fire on the hill by your place, right? Like, how do you get out of there? What do you do? I'm like, well, I grab a couple of things that I think are important and I get in my car and I drive off. Like, why wouldn't I? But he has this idea that I barely make it back to the house every night with a full charge, right? And I have to charge my car every single night, which isn't the truth at all, right?
Like he's picturing this golf cart coasting up to your driveway.
Right. And I'm like, bro, I traveled all the way up to Northern California and back. Let
me stop you for just 1 second because I want to ask you something. So Lee and I are both gas guzzlers.
Yes.
But you drive an EV.
Not by choice.
I do.
Not by choice, yeah.
More out of just
we'd love to have a Tesla if we could, yeah. But so what vehicle do you have? You've got an EV, Rick, and what EV do you have, and why did you get that particular one?
So I drive a Hyundai Ioniq 6. It's a sedan, and it's amazing. I can't talk highly enough on the amazingness of the vehicle. The reason I chose it is I've always been a sedan driver, and I honestly do not like Tesla's interface. Like just the way you interface with everything is through that screen. There isn't a lot of physical buttons.
You don't want your steering wheel shaped like a rectangle?
No, I don't.
Does your steering wheel have a weird shape to like a Tesla? Does it have a weird shape to it?
Okay. No, and that's the amazing thing of electric vehicles. You have all kinds of choices as to, just like with any other car. It's really not any different than, going to purchase any other kind of vehicle. There are lots of choices out there. Like my car is very much like a normal car. It's got all kinds of push buttons for controls on the steering wheel and on the dash, and it isn't all touch screen, right? So it still feels like something that I'm accustomed to.
Is that by design?
It is, absolutely. There are a lot of auto manufacturers that are moving more to that Tesla style because Tesla has been number one for so long, the number one EV, seller and manufacturer for so long that the other manufacturer trying to figure out what to do to try to catch up to them. So I think maybe they're transitioning away from physical buttons to these one screen touch control vehicles. But man, it's weird. It is weird being in one and you want to adjust the air, even the vents, you can adjust it with the touch screen, and it's just weird. I mean, that's just weird to me.
See, that's what I want out of an electric car, though. Like, I want to be on like Kanada's bike from Akira and have it like pull down on me and have the digital HUD and that's what I expect out of an electric vehicle. It's like
you want the Knight Rider,
yeah, it's like if I get into an electric vehicle, but they still want it aesthetically to feel like a fucking Carmen Ghia, like I'm not going to feel like I'm in a futuristic, piece of technology.
Yeah, you want to feel like you're 50 years in the future when you see
exactly.
Right. Like my car, so you get in my car, you sit down. In order to start the car, you actually have to push a button to start the car. It's a button, you push it, and that tells it you're ready to drive. Like Teslas, or I know Chevy Equinox and Blazer. I think you just get in those and you just sit down. As soon as you touch the brake, the car is ready to go. It's
no
on
e-brake?
and no e-brake. My car doesn't have an e-brake.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
well, I mean, repair on my car.
I guess technically it does, but you don't have to engage it because as soon as you put it in park, it automatically engages the e-brake for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea of like running out of charge. Okay, so that was one of the very first things when I purchased the vehicle that I had to get over myself was range anxiety, right? Like how far am I going to be able to get before, I have to charge again? But within the first couple of weeks, it went away because I realized, oh man, I can go a long time, without having to worry about a charge. And then being here in California, our charging infrastructure is pretty amazing. And there is public charging, everywhere. So being able to find chargers where I can go plug in, it's not a problem at all. So that idea of running out of electricity, it doesn't happen. And you get so used to knowing how far the car will make it. And it tells you, it has a little guessometer of how many miles it's estimating based on your recent driving of how far you can go. So that fear of not having enough charge, it goes away once you start driving, a car, even for just, like I said, a couple of weeks. It's
because that's the chicken and the egg problem, right? Like people are afraid to get an EV because of the range anxiety, but then the range anxiety exists because not enough people are getting an EV.
Right. Part of the last president's, his presidential administration, part of the things that they were trying to do, they had the big infrastructure bill that they got passed, the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And part of that money was to go to help build out the charging network across the United States. There are pockets where you're not going to make it through because there were no chargers, right? So they wanted to eliminate that and make it so that people can drive all the way across the country from anywhere and not have to worry about ever finding a charger. Mm-hmm. They're meeting some roadblocks with the current administration trying to pull money from that and prevent that from happening, but they haven't been successful in that, thankfully, because I think it's important if we want our auto manufacturing to remain at the forefront of that industry, we have to find a way to make the switch and catch up because we are so far behind. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So one of the things that got me to the car that I have was the charging speed. And it's a complaint that a lot of people have. This idea of, when like you guys go to fill up gas, depending on how long the line is to get into the gas station, like if you're a Costco person or whatever, the lines can be long there. But either way, you pull in, pump gas, and you're in and out of there in about 3-5 minutes, maybe, right? My car, which is one of the faster charging cars that you can get here in the United States right now, I can charge So the typical charging, where you start to when you finish. So let's say I start at 10% state of charge and I go up to an 80% state of charge. I can do that in as little as about 17 minutes. Average for me is about 18 to 20 minutes, depending on the weather and how warm my battery is, those kind of things. But it's pretty fast. And like so say for a road trip, right? If I go on a road trip and I get a certain distance and then I need to stop and recharge, it usually ends up right around the same time I have to stop and somebody needs to take a bathroom break, right? Or we got to stretch our legs. We've been on the road for a couple of hours. So we stop, plug it into charge, go use the restroom, go for a little walk, whatever. By the time I'm back, the car's way beyond what I need to get to the next stop or the destination or whatever. So it isn't that much more out of the norm. If you think when you're on a road trip and you go and you go get gas, right? You're usually going to go in, maybe grab some snacks, use the restroom. It's the same thing. And the car is charged by the time you're back to the vehicle anyway. It really isn't a concern.
How fast is that technology moving? Where like 5 years in the past, were you waiting longer? In other words, is that pretty stable where the amount of time you have to wait to charge hasn't changed much, or is it improving rapidly?
So, do you mean the amount of time it takes for the car to charge, or just
the amount of time? Because I think because technology moves along, right? And so, like, if you go back 100 years, charging, like, the battery technology wasn't as sophisticated, and being able to charge it quickly, like we can charge quicker nowadays. I'm just wondering if that's something that people can look forward to improving in the future.
Okay, so let's take an example of how far behind we are here in the United States. So my car is a Korean car. Okay, it's made in South Korea. It's using South Korean technology, right? If we look at Tesla, they can do the same charge from 10 to 80% in about an average of about 25 minutes. That's slower even than my car, right? So my car charges faster than a Tesla does. If you look at, let's say, Ford and their Mustang Mach-E, which has sold really well for them, that can do the same from 10 to 80% in about 35 minutes, depending on the year. They've gotten better over the last few years of that charge time, but it's still about 30 to 35 minutes to do the same from 10 to 80%. So China just released their Blade 2.0 battery, BYD auto manufacturer, and it goes from 10 to 80% in 6 minutes.
Wow.
And that's how far behind we are. It is insane to think of 6 minutes. I mean, you're talking about this pretty much the same time it takes you to fill up with a tank of gas is it's the same with these Chinese electric vehicles. So yes, the tech is getting better. The batteries are getting better. All of it. And what's the breaking point for people to lose that fear or concern over how long it takes to charge when you're on the road?
Mm-hmm. I see. There's a certain threshold it has to reach before. I was, in the research that I did, I was surprised to find that in the late 1800s and early 1900s, electric vehicles were actually pretty common in New York. And electric vehicles preceded the internal combustion engine. The technology preceded it.
Right.
Pretty interesting. And I guess in like New York City, there was an electric vehicle company. This was in like the early 1900s. That had a fleet of over 600 electric taxi cabs. But one of the biggest problems that they had is the charging time, right? It was just cutting into the cost too much because the downtime of having the vehicle down. So what they did was they converted an ice arena into a dedicated battery swapping station. So they could just come in, so they could just be charging the batteries and just pop them out and swap it in. Right. I wonder if and so then all of a sudden it changed from like hours or whatever it was to minutes, right? But I wonder if that type of thing is that a possibility to, I guess if the technology is getting to the point where they've got it within 6 minutes, it doesn't really matter. But maybe they could come in and then somebody just like takes out the 10-pound thing out of your vehicle and then puts in or however much it weighs, right? And then plugs it in and you're off.
Right. So the battery is probably the heaviest component of the vehicle. An electric vehicle has way less mechanical parts involved in it, right? So there's a lot of benefits to that. One, it cuts down on the weight of the vehicle. Two, it cuts down on the complexity of the vehicle. It cuts down on the maintenance of the vehicle. But because we are limited to how much energy storage, a certain battery size can have, the battery becomes now the heaviest component of the vehicle.
So I was way off with my guess there. Like
Well, you're not, and I'll get to it in a second, right? So most current EV cars are built on a platform, right? They've taken old designs of vehicles, like say something you guys are familiar with, a Civic or a Corolla or a Camry, right? These cars have been around for a long time, right? And they've thrown that out the window and they start fresh with a brand new design because it doesn't have to have all of those things that those cars have. This is a completely different build of a vehicle. So they start with think of it like a skateboard with wheels. So the whole bottom of the vehicle is the battery pack, and it's huge and it's heavy because in order to get enough range, you have to have enough energy storage. So that battery is the heaviest thing. So Tesla, for a while, they had at one of the events, they were showing their battery swap technology. So the idea was that you pull in to one of their charging stations, and instead of charging it, they would swap out the battery. So and it was fully automated. It goes and it unscrews the battery, drops it down. They get another battery that's fully charged, and it goes up and it screws into the bottom of the vehicle, and you drive off like no big deal. The whole process was supposed to take about 3 to 4 minutes, and amazing, right?
Yeah.
But they realized that the cost of that was going to be enormous, and it just wasn't feasible.
The cost of the technology to be able to detach it and put it back on.
The cost of the battery itself, because that is the most expensive part of an EV is the battery. Like
that's what I heard is one of the biggest holdups is a lot of companies, I don't know if that's still the case, but they're divulging how long the battery life. Where do these batteries go when they're done with them? How do they recycle them? Like, what is?
Yeah, so there's a lot of misinformation on that as well, and it's unfortunate, but you have to think of batteries. The battery is the most important part and has the most value of the electric vehicle. And there are companies that are in business right now, ready to take and start recycling batteries, like old EV batteries. You've got Redwood Materials in Nevada. You've got Li-Cycle in New York. With our current technology that we have now, we can recover from 95 to 99% of the high value metals that are in a battery. Even at that. So let's say, after I put 200,000 miles on my vehicle, okay, that battery will still be fine. I could still drive the car after 200,000 miles. I could still drive that car and it'd be fine. But I would have, instead of the full amount of storage, I would have maybe 85 to 90% of what the original storage capacity was. It would be a little bit less. It'd be 10 to 15% less than what it was when I bought the vehicle.
See, this sounds like a problem though, because like I know one of the problems is like with the EVs, the value goes down, depreciates much faster, especially on the luxury ones. I think that's because the technology is moving forward so quick.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I think with somebody with a gas tank, I'm thinking, oh, what if I bought a car and then my gas tank was shrinking? Like that's something I'd be like, oh, I don't want that vehicle, you know?
Right.
But so
Right.
when people are thinking of moving from a ICE internal combustion engine to an
Yes.
EV electric vehicle, I
Right.
think one of the fears is like, oh, now I'm going to have like the equivalent of a gas tank, but it's going to be shrinking.
Yeah.
Like
And
what would you say to someone who had that criticism?
and I think that's something that you have to take into consideration when you're purchasing a vehicle, is that our current battery technology, that's where we're at. But you also have to weigh the total cost of ownership. When I go in for maintenance they recommend on my car, I go in for maintenance at every 8,500 miles, somewhere around there. I think it's 8,500 miles.
Mm.
So my maintenance, every time that I go in for maintenance, I just went in yesterday morning. I took my car in for maintenance. I hit 42,000 miles. And the maintenance is rotate the tires, check the fluid levels, and check the windshield wipers and make sure they're in good shape, and my cabin filter, and that's it.
Mm.
There is no maintenance. There is no oil changes or
This
spark
is what I read
plugs.
is it's incredibly more efficient. Like cars, your typical gas powered vehicle has 20,000 moving parts, all generating friction and heat.
Right.
And then there's something like 20 moving parts in an electric vehicle, like
Right.
just astronomical difference between. And so all the stuff grinding and wearing down, you know.
Exactly. So the amount of money that you're going to have in maintenance costs is minuscule. Like brakes. Okay, so my car, when I go to slow the vehicle down, right, I press the brake pedal, but it's not actually using the brakes. It's using the motion of the vehicle and the motor to use regenerative braking. It's actually acting as a generator.
I think I read about this.
To
Like the
generate
kinetic
electricity,
energy,
right?
the
Yeah.
kinetic energy of the vehicle gets transferred
Exactly.
back to like restore the battery.
Yep.
And so
correct.
and so that means that it's not having to do so much friction on the brake pads.
Nope. It doesn't actually engage the brake pads until I am almost at a complete stop. So my brake pad should last easily over 100,000 miles. Where like you guys are having to change your brakes about every 35,000 miles, somewhere on there, right? Like my brakes are hardly being used, and I'll easily get 100,000, if not 150,000, before I have to change the brakes.
Another thing on the positive side is I was reading that like a lot of electric vehicles can take off on the line faster than an Italian supercar, faster than like a Ferrari or something, because it's the electric engine is so much more efficient with that initial torque.
It is. It's instant
where almost
torque.
100% of it is, right? And like with a gas engine, it's gotta spin itself up to speed before it's like really efficient. Right. But you're really efficient right off the bat. And so you're like, your ability to accelerate is, and I think you mentioned that when you first tried it out. Like I remember you saying how quickly it comes off the line when you want to go. It really responds.
Yeah, it does. And I don't drive it aggressively, so it isn't something where I'm launching the car on a daily basis. It isn't, I only really ever do that if somebody asks, can it do that? And so I show them, like, yeah, well, it can, but I don't drive the car that way. But yeah, that is absolutely true. But if you think about it, okay, you're going to purchase an old, a used EV. Those are the things you have to take into consideration: the cost of ownership, how much maintenance are you going to have to do. But then when you're purchasing used, you're also like, if it's an ICE car, you're worried about, did they keep up with oil changes? How are the hoses? How are the belts? Am I going to have to do a tune-up, a radiator flush? All of the things that go into a normal ICE vehicle, you don't have any of that in an electric vehicle. I don't have a catalytic converter because I don't have an engine. I have an electric motor. There is no transmission, so there's no transmission fluid to worry about. So when you purchase an EV, there's a heck of a lot less to worry about. Now, the less range, sure, that is a valid concern to have. That's totally valid. But you have to look at, okay, you may not get as far. So what do? You can replace the battery, right? And the cost to replace the battery is coming down over the years, right? As the technology gets better, We find ways to manufacture it cheaper. And there are battery technologies that they're working on to make that even better and last even longer, way longer than current tech, batteries will last. And that will be completely game changing, and all of those fears will go away. The battery, even in its current state, the battery will probably outlast the vehicle, meaning that will still be usable long before everything else on the vehicle starts to break down, just from wear and tear, normal driving. I just saw a post online from somebody who hit, was it 250,000 miles on their Ioniq 5. He's loved the vehicle. He had no complaints. He only had to change the brakes once at around 200,000 miles, somewhere around there.
Wow.
I'm like, man, that is insane. And his battery, instead of it's now, he lost about, was it about 15% in range after 250,000 miles. And if you think of any car that can hit 200,000 miles and have almost no maintenance costs, almost like no, right? Your alternator is going to go out. You're going to have to,
like, all those different components have all got wear and tear. But I think what's interesting with the EV is it's only pretty much wear and tear on one component, the battery, right?
Yeah.
Like that means that if you could swap it out, all the other stuff is probably just as good, nearly just as good, because it hasn't had all the friction and wear and tear.
Right.
Is that true?
So the issues, I've seen a lot of them with EVs.
Sure.
But the biggest issue that I've seen with it is technology is constantly changing.
Yes.
It's constantly changing, which is good and bad. It's like owning a PC or getting a new cell phone. You have to get a new charger. You have to get a new adapter. You have to get a new Like, it's like I look a lot for used cars online.
Sure.
That's what's in my price range and things like that. I see a lot of EVs on there. I see a lot of cheap ones on there.
Man, they're great deals right now. Really great deals.
Why are they so cheap? And then I look deeper into it, and then I realize that the charger that comes with it isn't a current charger. It's an older charger. So you're going to have a harder time finding charging stations that use that certain charging port. So it's like, do you get an adapter for that?
I didn't know.
What do you do in those cases?
Yeah, I didn't know.
All right, so let's go over the history of that. So in the early days, there was no standard because they just didn't have a standard. But there was a group that was working on a standard. Honestly, the first standard to come around is called CHAdeMO, and the only real vehicle that's still around today that uses that is the old Nissan Leaf. But that isn't, I don't consider the Leaf a viable option for most people, at least the old version of the Nissan Leaf, because that charging port is end of life, right? They're not supporting that anymore. You can still find a few charging stations that have a CHAdeMO plug, but it's slow charging, and the Leaf didn't have a very big battery. Its range was very limited. I want to say it was under 200 miles. It just isn't a practical vehicle for most people. So when Tesla started working on EVs, they went to the group that was working on the standard and were like, hey, hurry up. I need to start selling cars, and I need a standard that I can put into my car. And they're like, yeah, we're working on it. Musk finally got frustrated and said, okay, screw it. We're going to come up with our own standard. So they came up with what was called, the Tesla charging port or something like that. Now it's the same port, but it's called NACS, NACS, or North American Charging Standard. So that is their own charging port, and it's their design. Well, not long, but maybe a year after they started selling cars with that port, that universal standard came out, and it's called CCS, and it became the standard for everywhere. It was supposed to be the standard around the world. So back in shoot, I want to say 2021, somewhere around there. Tesla said, okay, you know what? All these different charging ports is ridiculous and it's complicated. And we need to consolidate around one to make it easier for everybody. So we're going to open up our standard to everybody. All you have to do is apply for, the access to it. And it doesn't cost anything. You just apply for it and, we'll approve it. And then everybody can implement that charging port on their car. So that's what happened. And immediately Ford and GM were on board, and then Hyundai and Volvo and Honda. And so everybody jumped on board and said, okay, we're going to all switch to this port. And that's what's happening. So all new cars have that one port.
But let me ask you real quick, because I was thinking, I know China is way ahead of us on the technology, right? How does that come into play? Like, did they adopt that port as well, or what happened?
No, it hasn't picked up outside of United States. I don't even know if Canada or Mexico are using the NACS port or not. I'm not sure. And I don't want to say something that isn't true.
Because you had mentioned something about China being ahead. From what I was researching, China, 60% or so of new cars in China are EVs, yes, compared to something like it's way below that in the US, something like 30%.
Yeah, exactly.
Much less. Yeah. So what I was thinking is it sounds great that standard has been adapted in our country, but if our American manufacturing is shaking in their boots about the Chinese manufacturing and how far ahead they are, because they go and look at the plants and stuff, then that might take over anyway, right? It might not be enough to compete with the Tesla standard, or the Tesla standard might not be enough to compete. I mean, or what?
And I don't know what the maximum throughput of the NACS port is, like how much, how many kilowatts you can put through that port max wise. I don't know, but I do know that if we took the tariffs off Chinese cars and we allowed them here, any car that was sold here would have the NACS port on it. They would just default to that port because it has now become the standard. And even the charging companies are starting to plan to switch all of their chargers to this port. So like my car has a CCS1 charging port, but I have a NACS adapter. So Hyundai gave it to me for free. So I can charge at any Tesla charging station that I want to. I have to pay Tesla prices, and so be it. But I can charge at any Tesla charging station. And that's been a valid complaint too. Like, why can't I just charge anywhere? Well, you mostly can, but Tesla was a closed system.
Put the electricity in a bucket and pour it in, okay? Like, what the
heck? Yeah, I mean, Tesla was closed off to
use your spare electricity canister in the back of your car.
Yeah, exactly. Just pull out the can that's rated for electricity, and you just pour out the glowing stuff.
So my car came with a charger, okay? It came with a charger that I can plug into just a normal outlet in your house. But to charge at that speed, to go from 10 to 80% would take days. It would take days to charge up the car at that speed.
I was reading about that on 120 volts, right?
Right. So that's
to get
called
it fully
level
charged
1 charging, right? That's called
more
level
than all
1.
Night. More than all night, even. You're not fully charged.
Then they have level 2 charging, and now you're looking at maybe 6 to 8 hours, depending on your setup, that you can charge much faster overnight. And then that's level 2. And then level 3 is the fast chargers. And that's where you can go from 10 to 80% in about 17 to 18 minutes.
That's the direct current.
Yeah, exactly. That's DC fast charging.
But then it sounds like that, but that's even superseded by Chinese technology right? Is that right?
Yeah. So my car at max can hit a charging speed of 245 kilowatts, where these Chinese cars are charging at like 1.3 megawatts. It's insane how much electricity they're pulling in order to charge the battery that fast.
How far are we from gigawatts?
Yeah, 1.21 gigawatts. buddy.
Maybe another 15 years.
A bolt of lightning. I was thinking about that, like carrying a bucket of like electricity around. I guess when electricity outlets were first getting put in homes, like when you first buy a home and it would have like electricity outlets in it.
Yeah.
This in the whatever year that was, like the 1900s or something. Some old lady was like, she bought all the the plugs to help your kids don't put their forks in it or something.
Oh,
or knives in it. She bought all those, and then whenever she would unplug something and plug it into something else, she would quickly put the like protector in the thing so the electricity didn't leak out. It's like, but I mean, you hear in all of these like electrician 101. This was my grandma, right?
Wow.
No, I think this was 1800s.
That would explain so much, Paul. That would explain so much.
But when you hear of like electrician 101 and stuff, they've got like think of electricity as like water. It flows and all this, if it's flowing, it's going to flow out of my port,
right.
But I mean, but I wonder if we'll be looking back and laughing at people thinking that their electric vehicle's going to explode. Like we'll be looking back at the same way people actually thought that.
Yeah.
But it's weird because like phones have exploded. There has been like phones that have, and even earbuds have exploded, I guess.
Well, there were 65 deaths with the first auto-driving Teslas. Like before it, there was the guy that got decapitated watching Harry Potter when the car drove under the semi truck. We're years past this though. This is like when people were using it when it first came out.
You're like, Paul, you're talking about like centuries ago. We're in the future now. No, but I mean, but was that because of the self-driving, Lee, or is that because of the
trusted the self-driving?
The self-driving, right? So that wasn't exactly the thing with the.
I don't even trust my lane correction.
So one of the big things that I hear people talk about, is the carbon footprint and how dirty EVs are compared to an ICE vehicle because of the mining of the minerals for the battery, right? And they're not wrong on that point. Okay, so if we look at say metric tons of CO2 in manufacturing, so an EV roughly 8 to 10 metric tons to manufacture an EV of CO2. ICE, a regular combustion engine vehicle, is about 5 to 6 metric tons. So significantly less. But as soon as you drive the car off the lot, EVs start paying it back because every time that you need to fill up with gas, you can't just count the gas that you're burning. Okay. You also have to account for the refining of that gas and the mining for the oil, the refining of that into gasoline, and then getting the gas to the gas station itself. So the carbon footprint, especially for someone like me in California, where most of our electricity is built on renewables. Same with you up in Washington, Paul. I pay back that CO2 cost to build the car and build that battery in about a year. People aren't taking that into consideration when they're making that kind of.
Isn't it also like there's something else too, which is how recyclable it is? Like isn't it much more recyclable? All of the with an EV.
Yeah, well, and that's that was one of the things I was talking about earlier. Is 95 to 99% of what is in the battery is going to be recyclable, and so let's go back to that car that hits 250,000 miles. And it's got 85% of its storage capacity that it had when it was brand new. And say, okay, the owner of the vehicle is like, okay, I want that range back, so I'm going to replace the battery. So that battery just doesn't go and get buried in a landfill. There's way too much worth and value in that battery. But that battery's still good. It's still fine. So even if they weren't to put it in another vehicle, it's going to find a life in home electricity storage. That's like a perfect place for those cells to go to, is in home storage, because it doesn't have the same high, consumption and charge that
There's no range concerns.
exactly. It's going to have years of life as a home battery. So when it finally does hit that end of life stage where it's in its current state, it's just not viable anymore. It's 90 up to 99% of it's going to be recyclable and reusable. The idea of batteries in landfill, this is ridiculous. And I understand there's a lot of misinformation out there about that, but it's not true. It's not true.
Something I want to bring up, but I'm a little bit hesitant, and how much we want to get into like politics and things like that.
Sure.
What you guys might think, but one thing that I think is a big factor that just happened pretty recently is that, the big beautiful bill.
Yes.
One of the major things that it did, from what I understand, maybe you know more about this, maybe you guys know more, is it the accelerated termination of federal EV tax credits.
Yeah. Yes.
And from what I've been researching, it's made a massive difference, where there was a market frenzy of people trying to buy electric vehicles within the time frame, but then those tax credits going away, the incentives go away. It said it could cost like $10,000 more over the lifespan of the vehicle, or something like that. Like add thousands of dollars to the cost of the vehicle. One thing that I think that's interesting, that China, because they have a top down, they've got, it's much more of an autocracy, I guess, than the U.S., but they've got that top down decision making, where they can go, okay, we're going to subsidize all of the battery manufacturers, and so
Yes.
that helps. So in other words, they're making the right decisions in that regard.
Right.
To keep I'm not arguing that like the autocracy is better, but like they can make those top down decisions, and then get the focus on electric vehicles. But with us, we've got, the administration changes. Suddenly your electric vehicle tax credits are, everything can change so quickly.
So the idea behind the tax credits to begin with was that we were seeing how far behind we were getting, and we needed a way to help catch up, right? If we wanted our auto manufacturers to keep up with China on a global scale, right? You can't just think of the United States in a bubble, right? Our manufacturers sell vehicles all over, right? All over the world. The biggest cost, again, in an EV is that battery. It's just very expensive to make those batteries. The idea with the tax credits was to have a way to make it cheaper for people to get into the vehicles, right? And incentivize people making the switch to an EV. And man, once you make that switch, it's hard to go back. Like once you've adopted the lifestyle and understand everything that comes along with it, you don't want to go back, right? The
initial costs are really upfront too. So by subsidizing it really makes sense, I think.
Right. So, but there were restrictions on how you could qualify for that tax credit, and in my mind, they were, it was a great idea, great implementation of it. So, in order to qualify for that $7,500 tax credit, the car had to be manufactured, had to have final assembly here. If it was final assembly here, then you could qualify for at least $3,750 of that tax credit. When you went to purchase a car, you could get that credit right off the purchase price of the vehicle. Now, the other $3,750, in order to qualify for that, the battery had to be, minerals and the parts that went into it had to be sourced from either North America or from countries that we had free trade agreements with. Basically, blocking out China was the whole purpose of that. Because right now, China is the largest manufacturer of EV batteries. CAT-L and BYD are the two of the largest battery manufacturers in the world. So the idea was to lock them out. So in order to get that other 3,750, you had to have batteries that were made here and minerals were sourced from here. And the requirements of how much of those minerals and stuff got higher and higher as the years went on until the tax credit fizzled out after 2032, I think was when they were supposed to end, somewhere around there.
Okay.
But the whole idea is to incentivize the switch and get people more interested into the electric vehicles and make them a little bit more affordable. And then that means you're giving money to the auto manufacturers and their incentive to build EVs because people want to get into them and can afford to get into them. And then incentivizing that you had to build them here and you had to, hire American workers to do it and building up our auto industry. So, and it was working because, you had Hyundai.
Like it makes sense in this case. Like the subsidies make sense to me.
Yeah. So Hyundai and Kia and Volkswagen, they were like, okay, crap. Well, we have to now manufacture these EVs in the United States. So like Hyundai and Kia both invested like $3 to $5 billion building factories where they now have 3,000 to 4,000 employees working in these factories. That's insane. That's great. That's what we want, right? We want to bring manufacturing back here. So that's what it was doing. And it didn't, and I guess I don't want to get too political, but it didn't add to the deficit, right? They had found ways to pay for it that didn't increase our national deficit. So it was a win-win. And there was so much controversy over it, but I feel like it was short-sighted, especially when you look at the success of what China is doing.
You mean short-sighted, you're talking about to terminate the EV
to terminate it early. Yeah, exactly.
I think so. Yeah.
BYD.
And now we're losing out to China because of that. Like it was helping us and it was helping other countries even focus on us, right? Now we're getting further and further behind. And that inconsistency of like one administration is going to come along and do something different all of a sudden. With China, they've got, they don't have that quote unquote problem, I guess,
No, and like you said, the entire government getting behind and helping subsidize the industry. Now, I would say BYD, one of the largest EV manufacturers in China, they haven't taken a lot of the government subsidies. They've been trying to go it on their own as much as possible. But if you look, so for comparison, let's say a Tesla Model 3, you can get into a Tesla Model 3, I want to say like starting price, $40,000, right around $40,000. You can get into a Tesla Model 3. Or you can get into a Chevy Bolt. They have a Chevy Bolt or a Chevy Equinox that are around $27,000 to $35,000. But a budget EV from China, like the BYD Seagull, they've sold a ton of these things. It retails in China for between $8,000 to $12,000, comparatively. It's such a massive, massive difference. Part of how they're able to sell those cars so cheap is, like BYD especially, is their vertical integration. So BYD, they manufacture roughly 80% of every vehicle in-house. The semiconductors that they use, so all the chips that go into an electric vehicle, and there's a lot, right? Because these are like computers on wheels. It's really what it is. And honestly, most even new ICE vehicles are, there's a lot of computers that run your new, combustion engine vehicle. But BYD designs and manufactures these chips that go into their cars. They do that themselves. They design and manufacture their whole powertrain. So, the motor, the inverter, they design and do all that. They designed the whole platform in-house, all of it. They started as a battery company in the mid-90s. They're mining all of the minerals they need for the battery and manufacturing the battery themselves. A couple of years ago, they went and they bought cargo ships And now they own a fleet of cargo ships that get these cars all over the world. So they own the whole freaking thing from beginning to end. You know, like I said, up to 80% of the vehicle. They
like
don't
if they
have
start
to.
taking if they start taking over the European market, then
Oh man,
the fact that we've got tariffs on them and stuff is going to matter less and less, right?
less and less, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not having to worry about margins on all of those steps, right? Because they own the process. So it's like, man, how do you compete with that? So when you hear, like you said, Honda saying we're toast, like there's just no way. Because that's why. That is exactly why. Even Ford is, Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, has pretty much said the same thing. Like, we can't compete. We don't know how we're going to be able to compete with this. He's talked about what China did in order to get their, EV manufacturing off the ground. They let Tesla go and sell in China. But the deal was that they had to work with Chinese auto manufacturers to make these cars. So what did the Chinese do? Well, they learned how to make the freaking cars through building Teslas. That's how they got so good so quick. And Farley at Ford,
they're so good at that, at like copying technology,
right? Yeah.
Even with
Farley at Ford is
AI
saying we might want to consider doing the same thing. Is letting China in, but they have to work directly with American auto manufacturers to build the cars here. They can't build them themselves.
Now you're talking about needing an administration and lawmakers smart enough to realize what you realize, which might be unlikely.
Right.
It was interesting what the Honda CEO said when he visited the factory in Shanghai. He said, "We have no chance against this." But then he sounded like a little bit later like he didn't want to quite give up. But that sounds like pretty much throwing in the towel. When do you think we have a chance against? There'd have to be like systemic changes.
So I looked into how can they sell these cars for as cheap as they are, and if you have the opinion that if it's made in China it's garbage, oh man, that's not true anymore, right? Like China makes some really great stuff, and you need to get beyond that opinion because it's not valid with everything anymore. These Chinese cars are good cars, and they're selling like crazy, and people have had them for years and they like them, right? There is no perfect car, even Tesla, the number one selling EV manufacturer, they have problems, right? They're not perfect, right? And BYD isn't perfect either, but these cars are really good cars. So I'm like, okay, so how can they sell them for so cheap if they're not taking a lot of the government subsidies that are out there for other Chinese auto manufacturers? So I'm like, okay, what are they paying their workers, right? So these people they're probably not paying them squat, because that's another opinion that people have of, well, China can do it because they don't, their workers live in horrible conditions. They're not paying them well. Well, that's not true either. So here's this comparison. I did a comparison of BYD there in is it Shenzhen? I think is where they're building, like their big manufacturing plant is. And then I compared them to Tesla, who's in Fremont, California. Okay. So average monthly base pay for someone who works at either BYD or even at Tesla in Shanghai, where the Tesla manufacturing plant is, they're making a monthly base pay of $800 to $1,400 US. U.S. auto worker at a Tesla factory in Fremont average between $4,000 to $6,500 U.S. dollars. So it's a big gap in what they're paying people, right? And so you're thinking, man, how is somebody in China supposed to live off of $800 to $1,400 a month pay? So if you look at the cost of living, okay, in Fremont, California, like we talked about in a previous episode, rent is about 75% of income. Average rent in Fremont is around $3,000 a month. If they're getting at a minimum $4,000 a month income, that's about 75% of their income just to cover rent.
I heard, aren't you like considered the poverty line at 50% of your income?
Exactly, right? Exactly. Yeah. So in China, in the same area where they're building these cars, average rent is $450, so only 37% of income. Monthly utilities, average in Fremont, $250. China, $50. A dinner out, average dinner out with tip, tax, about $40 in Fremont, California. In China, $8. So that puts people making $4,000 a month in Fremont. That puts them as, like you said, poor.
In the poverty line. Almost.
In poverty, right? Mm-hmm. And then in China, they're full middle class. Like they're doing fine. They're not rich, but they're not anywhere near poor. So this is the problem. And how do we catch up? What do we do?
Yeah, on a lot of fronts, things are different than they were in the 80s, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It's not the same China anymore, and we have to figure out what to do. The stopgap emergency was to put 100% tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles because we didn't know what to do. This time, I don't even think you can register a Chinese car in the United States for more than 6 months at a time. Like you can register it, but it can only be here for 6 months, and then it has to leave the country. I don't know exactly. That's what I've heard.
It's so strange to think like 60% of their new car sales are those electric vehicles, but yet there's none of them that you'll see on the roads here in the U.S.
Right.
But I mean, how long is that going to be a solution for us of just being like, hey, we shut you out of our market. Now you're screwed.
How long can we keep our head in the sand? I don't know. Right. So what do we do? And the current, administration here in the United States, presidential administration, they do have their head in the sand, and they're, they don't want anything to do with electric vehicles. And that's unfortunate, especially in a time right now. Like, Lee, how much last time you filled up? How much per gallon did you pay?
Oh, man. So I went to a gas station that was a little further away from me because I had to fill up after I got my car from the mechanic, and It was about $6.52 a gallon. So so which is ridiculous, right? But it was a Chevron right next to the freeway. But yet there's a I don't really know what this other gas station right next to me in my apartment complex, but over there it's $1 less. It's like $5.52 a gallon, right?
Man,
I don't understand the price points. Maybe because it's that Techron technology that's clearing out my fuel lines that they have to charge me extra for. But yeah, it was like around $40 something just for 5 gallons, which is crazy.
Wow.
Paul, how much is gas up where you're at?
Oh, it's less than that. I tend to not pay too much attention because it's more rural out here, so I don't have as much of a choices of where I can go or not. So I'm just like, well, I got to stop here and get gas, So whatever the price is, it's just
man. I would think in your situation they would charge more just because they know you're kind of landlocked where you're, like it's
we do try to fill up off the island when we can. We're on the north end of the island where the bigger city is,
right?
But yeah, the gas prices are. How does the I know we don't want to get too political, but how does the president go from selling Teslas on the White House lawn and being Elon Musk's best friend to doing the big beautiful bill and like shutting all the subsidies off?
Well,
because he was, it looked like they were going to be buddies, him and Musk, and then I think he really ticked Musk off with what he was doing with ending the subsidies and stuff.
Well, Musk was for ending the subsidies. He thought they were a waste of taxpayers' money.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because here's the thing: is he was selling vehicles at around $45,000, and he was selling a lot of them, so he didn't care. Like he felt he didn't need the tax credits to sell vehicles because he was already the most popular EV in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he, in the United States, still like the most
So
popular.
he probably sees it as something maybe that's more going to help his competitors.
Exactly.
I didn't know that. Yeah,
right. So he didn't care that they ended because he's like, I'm still going to sell a lot of cars. The problem is we have to think of it, for all the U.S. auto manufacturers and what we can do to help all of them make the transition and not get left behind.
You mean Musk isn't thinking of all of them? No.
To go back to the gas thing real quick. So I charged my car up the other day. So like a half a tank, I charged up 50% of my battery and it cost me $14.50, somewhere around there.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's using public chargers. That's not charging at home, right? Like if you have solar at your house, then your fuel, is free. Your charging is free because you can, add enough panels and compensate for what your car is going to need to charge the once or twice.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah. Because I heard people, this was a while back, but I remember people making arguments against EVs saying, they're not really as efficient as people thinking they're saving the environment, because actually all you're doing is you're just, instead of your car spitting out all the pollution, there's just some factory spitting out all the pollution somewhere that then converts that into electricity that they send to your car. But this definitely, but what your point there really argues against that point.
Yeah. Wow. Well, even like I was saying earlier, even if you factor in your location where you're at generates electricity using coal, you still have a lower carbon footprint than over, let's say, 20 years. Your carbon footprint is still much lower than a gas car, right? Because it goes again to mining, getting oil and then refining it into gasoline and then getting it to the pumps and then burning it to drive your car around, right? So it's not it's not a good argument, to be honest with you. So,
Yeah, I see. Yeah, but especially with that, I think especially with that point of like, if you're just getting energy directly from the sun, that totally negates that argument completely.
I think the biggest thing holding EVs back, and this is maybe just like a grand scope thing,
sure,
is just the overall price point of it in the long run. So it's like you have to have a significant amount of money to get the purchase. Not having the rebates definitely like puts a damper on that, but it's not a deal breaker.
Right.
But then after that, you have to take it back to designated locations in order to have it worked on, as opposed to having your reliable, pricey mechanic, because people have to be trained to work on these things.
Yes, they do.
So that's another thing that I believe Tesla ran into an issue when they first started coming around, is you had to take it to an authorized Tesla.
You still do.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times they might even come to you. Like Tesla's really crazy about that. They'll send out a mechanic, to come out and do whatever they need to do on your car at your location. Or if you have one close enough, they'll request that you go.
Is that just because the technology is so different, or I didn't know much about this?
Yeah, they feel that their mechanics are trained to work on their cars specifically, and that they know exactly the best way and procedures to do it.
It's really different the way they work, right? Like it's not 20,000 moving parts. It's like more computerized.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, and I would think it like also negates a lot of like warranty bullshit too. Like if you have an authorized dealer, it's like when you buy a certain type of a weed whacker or lawnmower that's like Echo at Home Depot. If you don't use specific Echo oil on it and follow certain warranty specifics, then it violates a warranty in your car. I would think it was the same with like electric vehicles.
This almost reminds me of the way Apple operates. Like, right? Does it sound like that? Like you can't, if you have to get it fixed, you got to go to the Apple.
And that's definitely something to consider when you're, when you're shopping around and looking at an EV, is do they have dealers close by where you can take your car when, it's something needs worked on or whatever.
But it's also worth considering that the maintenance is a lot less too.
Exactly. I was just going to say, you have to consider that.
Or less frequent, I should say.
When you look at what is it, like Consumer Reports or JD Power, and they look at the reliability, EV reliability. You would think, okay, well, all this talk of less maintenance and stuff means less things can go wrong. EVs are right there in the middle of the pack of reliability. But you look into what it is actually that went wrong, and it's the vents got stuck, or hatch release wasn't working right. It isn't big mechanical problems, total vehicle failure, right? It's little things here and there, just normal things that can go wrong with building a car. You have to you have to experience the reliability for yourself, and the understanding of there's a heck of a lot less mechanically that can go wrong, and more electronically that can
I think
go wrong.
I think I'm in the same boat as Lee, because I think, like, from what you're saying, it really convinces me on a lot of these points about electric vehicles. But like Lee was saying, when he was looking up the cost of vehicles, the difference between, like, for what our finances are right now, it's nice to think, oh, the total cost of ownership is so great, is so much better. I'm for that, great, awesome. But if I've only got this amount of money to spend right now, and money's tight, unlike Lee's saying, the discrepancy between the two, that's where the subsidies were helping, right? And it's good for everybody, exactly, I think, to subsidize something like this that's better for the environment.
Do you think we'll ever see the $20,000 or the $15,000 EV, like something that's priced at like the price of a motorcycle?
Yeah, but you got to get the cost to manufacture the batteries down. So one of the technologies that they're working on for batteries is the shift to solid state. So right now you've got, I'm going to try not to be real sciencey because I'm not a scientist, right? So inside a battery, you've got an anode and a cathode, and you've got, so electricity comes in and it goes out. And in between the anode and the cathode, you have a separator, and that separator is liquid. And most of it right now is made up of, it's lithium based. So the idea with solid state is you get rid of that liquid separator and you change it to a solid separator. And in doing that, you can lower the density and weight of the battery. You can lower the amount of minerals that you have to have in the battery, and you can make them much, much safer than current batteries are. So less likely to catch fire, overheat, all of these things. But it's the technology to build and design solid state is out there. There's companies that are doing it. QuantumScape is one. But the problem is manufacturing at scale, scaling it up to manufacture a whole bunch of these batteries. It's not easy with our current technology, and we haven't figured out a cheap way to do it. But if we can do that, well, now you can build smaller batteries, and you have to have less cells, and they use less rare minerals. And so you can make the cost of entry, you can bring it way down, because like I said, the most expensive part of the EV is the battery. And if you can get that cost down to, under $5,000 to build a battery pack and still get decent range, man, yeah, absolutely. You can see cars that are, I don't know that you'll get down to 15,000 in the United States with having to, pay our workers here and all the things that we expect here working in factories. I don't know you get it that low, but I think you can get it down to maybe $20,000 in today's money.
That's not bad.
But even at that, like, if you were to look right now, if you're looking for a car, I wouldn't necessarily say you have to look at a new electric vehicle, because used EVs are amazing deals right now. Like you can get, like my car, its value right now, I think, is $17,000, $16,000. And I only have 40,000 miles on it. And my car's amazing. Yeah. My car's freaking amazing. And I can't believe its value is so low. Its value is so low is because people were concerned about the longevity of that battery and just the overall reliability of that over the course of that many miles.
And is it that range anxiety too? Part of that?
Of course, yeah, of EVs in general. But what's funny is in March, starting in March, right around the time we started this thing with Iran, people have gotten way more interest in EVs, and used EVs especially have shot up. Like the sales of used EVs have gone up quite a bit. So I'm hoping, for me, I'm hoping that the used prices can go up a little bit, right? But for people who are looking to get into a car, that's a great purchase, because you're getting a car that is going to require almost zero maintenance, and you're going to pay so much less in fuel on a weekly, on a monthly basis. Man, it's a no-brainer. It really is a no-brainer at those prices.
Yeah.
So yeah, guys, anything else we need to touch on before we end this one today? Any questions or concerns?
In the market for a car, I'll give you a call.
I'm definitely going to take a look.
Yeah,
I'll take a look at that.
They got the charging stations at work. I got to take advantage of them.
Man, dude, I went on real quick. I went on this trip around California up to Napa and then all the way down, right? So many places, free charging. I go into a restaurant, plug my car in, get free gas, Now, it may only be that I get, 30, 40 miles in the time it takes me to, have a meal and chill for a while, right? But it was free. It's free. And then you go to the next place and, free charging. Oh, look, the hotel has free charging. Man, why wouldn't you want free gas? Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Super convenient.
Cool.
Yeah. And then you also get prime parking too. Like, a lot of those charging spots are right
up in front.
Right up in front. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So, yeah. Well, it's been another good episode, guys. Always fun talking to you guys. For those of you who are listening in, thanks for checking us out. And hopefully you'll tune in to the next episode. So yeah. All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.